GR86 engine failures due to RTV. Here's part 2. What is the oil pressure switch / alarm set at? Also, what is the designated oil pressure for the 2.4 liter boxer? Wished Subaru had fixed RTV problem and glad they put in larger surface area screen, but they should have put on oil pan cover that allowed for easy clean out during oil change and installed an oil pressure gauge as opposed to a switch. Philip M. Okay, so multi-part question, let's try to break this down. What is the oil pressure switch alarm set at? And the short answer is it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, in these modern Subaru chain engines, the oil pressure switch or low pressure warning is pretty much useless. And I'll tell you guys why. So I saw this a lot on like your normal Subaru vehicles, so like Outback, Forester. The oil change intervals are so long. So 6 months, 7,500 miles. At least that's what it was when I worked there. And in tandem to that, consider the oil consumption spec from Subaru. So the spec is 1 quart consumed per 1,300 miles is within spec for a Subaru engine, according to the factory. So think about that for a second. Let's just call it 6.5 quart capacity, 6-month interval. So if you're like the majority of customers that don't check their oil level, 6 months later means 6 quarts burned. So I used to see this all the time on scheduled service where you drain the oil and like 1 quart would come out. Where am I going with this? The whole time there was only 1 or 2 quarts in the engine, the oil pressure switch never activated or gave you a warning, right? There's no oil level switch in these engines, only a pressure switch. Long story short, you can still build oil pressure with 1 quart in the engine. So yeah, basically to answer that question, what oil pressure does the switch or alarm get set at? It doesn't matter because you could have 1 quart in there and it wouldn't activate. In tandem with this FA24 issue, let's just hypothetical, the strainer could be 75% blocked off, still getting some oil in there. That's some little bit of oil still building oil pressure, so. All right, larger surface area screen on the oil pickup. Yeah, so the new style oil pickup, we actually just had a brand new GR86. The customer's competes in a local time attack series, so he's been doing it for a long time, very competitive, very good driver, which is why immediately after buying the car, he was just like, we're gonna pull the pan. I wanna check it. We're not gonna take a risk. And sure enough, the oil pickup in that guy, regardless if there's like 5 areas on that pickup where it can pull in oil, that top large section was absolutely plugged with RTV. I've heard from other people about previous designs being better where, what I'm personally used to is the screen's actually at the bottom of the pickup. So, hypothetically, if it sucks up stuff, that stuff can still fall down. The new style pickup where it's a whole tube and then the screen's at the top. But so far this new oil pickup design has not been working well, as we've all seen. Next question, can you also use Blackstone oil analysis? Send your oil to see what materials are in it. From TM. Yeah, I highly recommend Blackstone oil analysis. They will even see if there is an excess amount of foreign materials like RTV in the oil. I have a few friends and customers with the Gen 2 that are regularly getting the oil analysis, and in this case RTV is our worry, right? Is the amount of RTV in the oil getting worse? Is it decreasing? It's definitely tough to eyeball it, and Blackstone oil analysis is always a great idea. Next question, on the first gen of BRZ86, did you see RTV engine failure only in the early years of Gen 1, i.e. 2013, 2014? Have you seen this failure in later gens, i.e. the 2019 or newer? In my experience, it doesn't seem like the first gens from the factory have this excess RTV getting stuck in the oil pickup issue. RTV getting stuck in the pickup that we saw later on during the valve spring recall fiasco era. I think the general consensus is it was technician caused. So not from the factory, it was technician caused from either, applying too much RTV, not doing the cleanup properly. In the general consensus, I think for Gen 1, excessive RTV was a non-issue like it is for the Gen 2s. And to follow up, Tom H also replied to that question. The RTV issue on early first gen was from technicians incorrectly performing the valve spring recall. Anything produced model year 15 plus wouldn't have had that issue as the valve springs were updated by then. So to be clear, no RTV issues from factory throughout the life of the first gen. It's difficult to say they should have the process locked down for the second gen since it's a different motor, but same family, 2.4 liter. If you're keen on buying one, I'd honestly wait 1 or 2 years for them to sort out any warranty issues that pop up. And yeah, I'd agree with that. I think with any new car, especially the first year, always going to have bugs and teething issues, and that goes for all manufacturers. So, although I think the GR86 is a great car overall, and I was kind of shocked through this time period that the car's been out. We haven't really seen any issues, and then now this RTV fiasco, I'm kind of not surprised with it being, you know, the first model year of this car. How does one cut the filter open? Timur I. We have a special oil filter cutter here at the shop. If you track the car and do your own oil changes, I think it'd be a good idea to invest in an oil filter cutter just so you can inspect the pleats on every single oil change. Great idea to monitor like engine health. Is there, you know, contaminants getting into the filters? But if it's a one-time only thing, honestly, brute force way, hacksaw works fine. You're gonna get metal shavings in there from the saw blade, but you know, I guess in this case with these Gen 2s, we're looking for RTV between the filter media. If someone plans on tracking their BRZ86, is it worthwhile to drop the pan and try to cut away and remove any silicone that has squished out? So I'm gonna base this on the Gen 2 that we just talked about, the one we pulled the pan off immediately. If I saw big excessive chunks in the upper oil pan, I think I'd be inclined to take them off or remove them, but I wouldn't go too crazy. You may be creating more of a problem than you're trying to solve. But I would say right now, if you plan to track the car at all, I would pull the pan immediately. I wouldn't bother with the boroscope or the oil filter inspection on a track car. This is just based on the Gen 2s we've had here where we've pulled the pan, and yeah, you know, 2,000 miles, 1,500 miles, and there's plenty of RTV inside that oil pickup screen, unfortunately. How come Subaru switched from traditional gaskets to silicone? Some benefit must outweigh these downsides? From Crown Tug. So the short answer is there is really no benefit for us as the consumer or the technician working on the car. All of this was for ease of manufacturing because it's much easier for a robot to just put silicone than, you know, the tooling to cut grooves to make gaskets, all the part numbers for the gaskets and seals. Much easier just to glob silicone everywhere, if you will. During my time with Subaru, I saw this throughout. Ease of assembly for the factory, which unfortunately meant much more difficult to service for the end technician or user. One great example is the airbags. The airbags used to have 3 screws, Allen headed, to screw them to the steering wheel, and for ease of assembly they created spring clips so the robot could just pop in the airbag. Very difficult if you don't know what you're doing to move all the spring clips to the side all at once to get the airbag out. So again, ease of assembly or manufacturing for the factory, but unfortunately that means much more difficult to service. And you know, to sum it up, the after effects of, you know, well, we're gonna seal the whole engine with silicone, but what's gonna happen after that, right? If the engine is held together by silicone, how is a mechanic supposed to do a disassembly? Is it even feasible? Cybernetic xylem. Yeah, it sucks. A lot of reseal jobs, if the engine's leaking, turns into an engine out job, which means I'm removing the engine to fix a small oil leak. It's also a nightmare because if you can imagine, the timing cover is literally like this big. You know, a technician has to manually clean 2 sides, right? The timing cover side and the engine side. Got to clean it thoroughly because I don't want excess silicone or the extra stuff going back into the oil pan. So yeah, it's feasible. It's just really difficult, really labor intensive. And you know, unfortunately from the factory or even like the end consumer who takes their car in to get serviced, you don't see how labor intensive, how difficult the process is just to clean off all the silicone and keep everything clean and then do clean assembly afterwards. Really unappreciated task. Why did Toyota team up with Subaru in the first place? May as well hooked up with Lada. Lada, if you guys don't know, is a crappy Russian car company. And this question's from Mr. Whatever. So here's what they told us at the Subaru Training Center. Fuji Heavy Industries, which is Subaru, Toyota bought a major stake in Fuji Heavy Industries. I want to say it's like 20%. Someone go ahead, correct me if I'm wrong. And so what they told us in school was that when they decided for the first gen, the new 86 to come out, Subaru reached out to Toyota to partner up on this project to strengthen the bond now that Toyota had a major stake. That's exactly why. So is there any hope that Toyota will Kaizen it and make it better? I guess you're saying they've already been letting it continue all these years of previous gens, so don't hold out. From Andy D. So Kaizen, the Japanese term for continuous improvement. Well, Subaru makes these engines, so I don't know if Toyota is going to Kaizen it or not. If we looked at the Gen 1, Toyota, in my opinion, totally fumbled the ball with, especially the 13, 14 model years, all the bugs and teething problems, and then the valve spring recall fiasco. So especially 2013 model year, the ones with all the bugs, it was funny talking with other Toyota techs. Toyota, for the same problems the BRZ was having, they would have a TSB that would be a different fix. For example, we would have a reflash, they would replace the whole ECM for some reason, right? So same problems, two different fixes. I could not comprehend, why don't we just talk to each other? Same car, should be the same fix, right? Should the 2022 WRX owners be concerned having the FA24? From Robert T. All right, so that's a great question. So I keep hearing that the FA24 in the Gen 2, whether you have a Toyota or Subaru, they're both made in the same plant, supposedly. I don't know about the FA24 and the new WRX. I don't know if the oil pickup design is different. So the short answer is I don't know. You would think they're both FA24s, they would have the same excessive RTV issue, but who knows, maybe the FA24 and the WRX is made at a different factory or under different tolerances, different conditions. I don't know. Although, we don't hear any WRX or STI guys complaining about it, so. Yeah, and I imagine being forced induction, those engines rely much more on a good oiling system. So thinking out loud, if those did have a excessive RTV problem, I think it'd be much more apparent in a forced induction car. Should I be worried if I only use my car as a daily? I don't ever plan on tracking it. From Tien the Editor. So yeah, definitely still has its risks. The last GR we did, the top screen totally plugged up with RTV. As you run the engine, I imagine more and more RTV is just gonna get in there, and the engine's physically blocked from being able to suck the volume of oil that it needs. So yeah, I'd still be worried even if you just use your Gen 2 as a daily driver. If RTV is used to seal several joints in the motor assembly, is it possible that the over-application of sealant in other joints could lead to future catastrophic failures as serious as this one? From Macula. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like I have some customers deep diving, doing research, and they can tell where the silicone's coming from based on if it's jagged or not, based on different colors. I got to do more research on that myself, but for sure I have some track customers that really deep dive into these cars and especially this RTV issue. RTV from other places like the timing cover, the valve cover, you know, the 3-part cam carrier, all that excessive RTV that falls off could definitely present an issue. It's not just the upper and lower oil pan. You think Toyota/Subaru will resolve this issue for their 2023 models? Maybe it's too late if they already started production for 2023 before realizing this issue. From Harris. My gut says they were already producing the engines for 2023, and we're just finding out about this excessive RTV issue. I doubt that the issue has been fixed for 2023. We're gonna see what happens. Unfortunately, during my time in Subaru, a lot of these issues the manufacturer likes to keep secret. And I'll just give you a personal example. The first 2014 Forester engine failure in the United States, I'm the one who fixed that one. So I got to work with the field service rep, which is basically a technician from Subaru of America that they send out to fix, you know, special cases like this. And he was telling me that basically when we took the engine out, we were gonna put it in a box and ship it to Japan for them to, you know, find out what's wrong or what failed. And basically he said, unfortunately, even for him, they're not going to tell him what the failure was and what the fix is. You know, if you're coming from corporate and, you know, Japan's not telling you information, what do you think about us, the tech? Or not even us, like you guys as the consumer, the customer. So yeah, not optimistic that they're gonna tell us like, oh yeah, this was the failure and then this is the fix we're gonna do for the Gen 2s that come out from here on out, right? Many of the places just doing a cork gasket would be super cheap, easy and more reliable. I wonder why they keep preferring RTV on all the areas. What is the manufacturer cost benefit? From Sculptura. Again, apparently it is a huge cost savings just to goop RTV everywhere instead of the specialty machines to, you know, cut grooves for gaskets and then all the part numbers for gaskets. Definitely possible. I'll just give you an example. The Toyota 1ZZ or 2ZZ, that front timing cover is sealed with a timing cover gasket, and it's basically just a ribbon of, you know, rubber gasket material. Just a straight ribbon, and you just kind of insert it into the timing cover. But yeah, that thing actually has a gasket. Maybe that's the fix, I don't know. Put a gasket for at least the front timing cover on these FA24s. I think also the kicker to that is that Subaru basically uses the same engine across all their model lines. So the H6, FA24, FA20. So I don't know if it would be that much more expensive. It's not like you guys have, you know, you're not like Dodge where you have, you know, 5 or 6 engines for that one car. I don't know if it's, again, this is just from a dum-dum like me. I don't know if it's that expensive to make gaskets for one engine that you use for your whole model line. I don't know. All right, and then Alan says, funny enough, I just started work for a Subaru dealer 2 months ago. Silicone must still be a factory issue because in the past 3 weeks, there's been about 4 or 5 2022 NA Outbacks coming in with lower oil pans leaking through the silicone. Some techs are thinking it's set too long before being installed. So yeah, I'm not surprised. It's that same dark silicone that I saw when I was a Subaru tech. I jokingly put as a response to his comment, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. I knew a problem was going to arise with this new Gen 2 86 for the first few years of production. I guess I'm going to have to wait a couple years of production until they sort out all the common problems and bugs. Safest bet is to wait until they refresh model, but I and no one else wants to wait that long. From Edward M. Yeah, again, I was surprised during the initial run of this model up until now. Like, first model year, this thing's doing pretty good so far, until now. Aaron J says, this blows my mind using silicone building engines. I'm not familiar with regular engines and what's normal, but every air-cooled VW engine we build or rebuild absolutely 100% does not get any silicone at all. And for this exact very reason. Not on the valve cover gaskets, which everyone seems to do. I have a 19 STI and we were seriously considering a GR86 for my wife, but this isn't worth the chance of having to deal with all this BS. Thanks for the informative video, really helpful by the way. Why would they move away from gaskets and go to a silicone sealant? Well, thank you for the kind words, Aaron. I really appreciate it. And yeah, again, why would they move away from gaskets to sealant? Gotta save that money, man. Thanks for all the info. What oil do you run? Will Motul 300V 0 weight 40 be ideal for the time attack? From Arun K. All right, again, from my experience working on hundreds of these Gen 1, Gen 2s, right? We've been using 5W30 as a band-aid to prevent excessive oil temps, whether you have a Canyon, Toge, track car, without an oil cooler. We've found out that even the liquid oil cooler in the Gen 2 is not sufficient on a hot track day. So even those guys are still running 530. I don't have enough data on oil weights for the Gen 2, but I know for sure on the Gen 1, when I ran time attack in my personal car, we were fine running 020 with a Jackson Racing oil cooler. And I think across the field for 8.6 Drive Challenge, that's the general consensus, is guys would stick to the 020 with an oil cooler. And to my knowledge, only forced induction guys were running 530. My Gen 2 track customer, the oil pan case we just did, he put Motul 5W30 in his, and he's really experienced, so you guys can do what you want, but as for me on the Gen 2, I need a little bigger sample size or, you know, larger sample population to give a real recommendation for oil weights at this point. But yeah, for daily drivers, stick to the factory weight 020. You'll be fine. What about the WRX from Kaizen? I was about to say Kamehameha. Yeah, same thing. I would expect a forced induction car would more heavily rely on the oil system. Although we have not, in general heard about this excess RTV problem with WRX guys. So someone chimed in the comments below, what's up with the FA24 DIT guys? Do you guys have the problem or not? Jason C asked a similar question. Heard of any issues with the FA24T new WRX? And yeah, I responded that it's a good question. Not sure if the two engines share any similarities like place of manufacture, failure rate, etc. But great point. Does the WRX have this issue? Again, somebody tell us below. Isn't the gold standard for RTV to bolt the pan down immediately after application to hand tight, then cure to spec before torquing to final torque? I waited a few days to torque to spec, but I was waiting on parts anyways. From Joshua H. No, I think older silicone was like that, where you'd let it like set and then you could torque to the final spec. I did training with Permatex really recently. Basically, two big things I got out of it. When you're sealing a component like an oil pan, circle your bolt holes. That actually used to kind of be a hack thing. If you saw someone circle the bolt holes, it used to just be go on the inside of the bolt holes, but Permatex says go circle your bolt holes. Also, torque immediately. Don't let that thing set up or whatever. Torque that pan down immediately. Just like oil, I imagine RTV technology has changed a lot since then. All right, last question and probably the most important one. I'm curious as to why issues like this still pop up when engines still have been manufactured for so many decades with robots. Wouldn't the correct application of sealant have some sort of standard practice by now? From Brian. Well, Brian, speaking of robots, mistake? Skynet. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see a part 3, you want some more information, want to make fun of me or fact check me, it's all good. Leave something in the description below. I appreciate all the support, you guys. I also appreciate all the constructive criticism and comments. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.